At least 8 people have been killed in an attack in New York. The city's mayor is calling it, quote, an act of terror. Hello, I'm Anand Naidu, and this is The Heat. We're following a breaking news story in New York City. New York officials say 8 people have died and around a dozen were injured after a suspect drove a truck into cyclists and pedestrians near the World Trade Center. The city's mayor, Bill de Blasio, is calling it, quote, an act of terror. Let's listen.
This was an act of terror, and a particularly cowardly act of terror aimed at innocent civilians, aimed at people going about their lives who had no idea of what was about to hit them. We know that this action was intended to break our spirit, but we also know New Yorkers are strong, New Yorkers are resilient, and our spirit will never be moved by an act of violence, an act meant to intimidate us.
Let's go now to our correspondent in New York, John Terrett. And John, could you take us through these tragic events in New York this afternoon?
Well, Anand, good evening from New York on what is the day of the worst terrorist attack here since 9/11/2001. And ironically, it's taken place in almost exactly the same area. Let me tell you where it happened. It happened very close to the World Trade Center site, pretty close to the New York Stock Exchange and Wall Street in Lower Manhattan. It actually took place on a very, very busy road, which is almost like a motorway or a freeway. In New York, it's known as the West Side Highway, and it runs north to south on the west side of Manhattan and borders the Hudson River, which of course is the border with the next door state of New Jersey. And running along that very busy, very fast road is a cycle path, which is very well known by New Yorkers and very well used, particularly at the weekend. And what happened today at around about 3:30 Eastern Time, which is 19:30 GMT on Monday, was a rented white flatbed truck from the Home Depot, which is a national chain of stores here. It's a home improvement chain. The truck was rented from there. It barreled its way from north to south along that cycleway for about 20 blocks. In the end, as we now know, killing 8 people and injuring at least 15, and I'm afraid that number is expected to rise. Well, the truck continued on its way down the cycle path until it crashed into one of the recognizable yellow school buses that they have in New York and indeed all over America, crashed into the front of that. 2 adults and 2 children were injured at that point. And then the man who's been named as a 29-year-old living in Tampa, Florida, and also with an address in nearby New Jersey, is said to have jumped out of the vehicle that he was driving, brandishing 2 handguns. One turned out to be a paint gun, the other one turned out to be a pellet gun. But that was enough for a policeman who'd been assigned to the area to shoot him in the stomach. Now, he did not die. He's in hospital at the moment in an unknown location, being treated and is expected to survive. But according to eyewitnesses, when he jumped out of the van, he shouted, Allah al-Akbar, which is Arabic for God is great. Now, Mayor de Blasio, who is the mayor of New York City, has called this a cowardly act of terror. The governor of New York State, Andrew Cuomo, came to New York City and said that there was no evidence that this man was acting in concert with anybody else, that this most likely looked to be a lone wolf attack. And then within the last hour or so, we've heard from the White House. We were told that President Trump had been informed and was being kept in close contact with what was happening here in New York City. And within the past hour or so, he has issued a tweet, and we can put that on the screen. President Trump tweeting, "In New York City, NYC, looks like another attack by a very sick, deranged person. Law enforcement is following closely," and then in capitals, "not in the USA." Anand?
Now, John, what is the security situation in New York this evening?
Well, it's been stepped up. I mean, it's always very, very tight here. And one of the things that the authorities have been doing a lot lately is to put big concrete blocks around all key buildings, be they government buildings or just important buildings where corporations are based, or indeed in the area around Times Square, which is known as the crossroads of the world and visited by many people. So that's been going on. But clearly you can't put concrete blocks to stop vehicle attacks like this absolutely everywhere over the city. And it does seem, from what's been said by the authorities, that this attack was deliberately planned and was probably scoped out for a while before it went ahead. This, as I say, I can't stress enough, this is a very, very populated and popular area of New York City. People around the world may not have heard about it, but here in the city, the West Side Highway and the cycle route along it, alongside the Hudson River, is very, very well known indeed. So tonight, the mayor and the governor are saying that New Yorkers should continue about their business as normal. Of course, here in America tonight, 31st of October, it's Halloween. There's a Halloween parade in Manhattan, so security has been stepped up significantly for that. But all over the city, the NYPD and other federal agencies like the FBI are on red alert, just in case something else happens. Arnett?